Welcome back to another random character creation challenge. I'm Emmett, the sick boy. Bear with me. I am joined again by my brother Wyatt.
Yep.
It's been over 2 years since our last creation video.
Jeez, how time flies.
These are the results behind us of the two that we had done. We've only filmed that one. Yeah, I always intended to do another one, but life didn't find a way.
Well, there it is.
But yeah, this is the game we play where we pick random characteristics from a select number of categories. We take those characteristics, go our separate ways, come up with our own interpretations, and then create an artistic rendering of the character as we see them.
I love this. He's such a charming soul. He's got a story to tell.
Yeah. But this time around, we're switching things up a little bit. Because normally, I like to make stuff in 3-dimension physical materials. And he likes to draw or paint stuff on the computer and whatnot. But I've been learning the digital art program, and he is interested in some of my materials. So we've decided to swap mediums.
See what happens.
Yeah, I'll put my art skills to the test, and then he'll do something with clay or whatever you want to use.
Because I used to play with clay back in the day, so we'll see if I can take from that well once again and form a fun little friend. I don't know where all these rhymes are coming from. I guess that's just where my heart is now.
I guess as an appetizer, the project before the project. If we're gonna make a regular thing out of this, I wanted to do something a little more special.
Random character creation kit. This is the first time I've seen this.
I wanted to do something. I thought about just buying a cheap treasure box or something. And then I remembered that we had this old kitty briefcase just tucked away somewhere, so I modified it. And then I was just wandering through Dollar General.
Whoa! Alchemy!
And just randomly found all of these little glass jars. And at one point, I thought I had counted that we had 16 categories. But then it turned out just to be 14, so 2 of them do not have anything in them. But that's yet. We could always change it up a little bit. But then that's just also happened to be how many easily fit in here.
Wow.
Too. So
okay. Interesting. I feel like you need to become a traveling salesman, going door to door and opening up your briefcase.
Would you like some armor and or clothes? Hello, children. Would you like to play a game?
This is elaborate.
May have been a little overkill, but I'm happy with how it turned out. Except some of my handwriting. I can't do much about that.
I mean, we'll do the best with what we've got.
Who wants to pick first?
I'll let you lead the charge.
Silhouette. Man, I didn't want to jinx ourselves beforehand and say like, oh, I really hope that since like these two landed on opposite ends of the spectrum, I hope we go with the third.
Okay.
The third one, but so far we're off to that start, so.
Okay.
And so human accessories, if we want to.
Right. Where's a hat?
Oh yeah, and do we want to? Because like normally limb count was reserved for more like monstrous or machine things, but do we want to go ahead and
given in any setting, like you can have a human type character, like within fantasy and sci-fi that still has multiple limbs, and limbs specifically arms.
Or we had that debate. We keep going back. I think limbs. I'm gonna go ahead and say limbs is just limbs, any limbs.
Okay.
So if we wanted to do limb count.
Okay. Uh-oh, too many limbs.
3.
Okay. Ooh, I get to pick the genre.
Now
this one really tells you where things are looking. Apocalyptic.
Apocalyptic. Okay. Gender. Female.
Age range. Old.
Physique. Skinny weak. Which that's what I was just thinking that's what we got with before. But I mean, this will obviously be a very different
You
character.
get what you get.
That is the randomization.
Presentation. And I'm gonna hope you have a file tucked away
Hello. The hell are you supposed to be?
every time you say presentation.
Because he's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now.
Yeah? What's the difference?
You know the clip you need to use.
Presentation!
Yes, always. Dark and brooding,
Okay.
so fitting that apocalyptic vibe.
Clothes and or armor. Half armor.
Damage. Beaten and old. Do two olds make a new?
Or I guess like
Now
I think how
not just old, you're very, very
like how I interpreted it before was like age is the literal age,
Yeah.
and then damage is like what they've gone through along the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Weapon. Sword, knife.
And last one, color scheme. And we picked two
Yeah.
for this. White.
White. Did I forget to red, white?
I guess you need to write white right now.
Yeah, because I added some extra colors to the ones just
There's
that we'd
a lot
have
of
all of
colors.
our bases colored.
Colored or colored?
You know what I mean.
And yellow.
Yellow. So, take it in. Human with a hat, 3 limbs, apocalyptic, female, old, skinny, weak, dark brooding, half armor that is beaten and old, wielding a sword and or knife, heavily featuring yellow and white.
Okay. Now this will be very interesting because with all of my prior clay building skills, that's mostly been with animals and critters. So I do not know where my expertise lies fashioning a human character.
Uh-huh.
We shall see where that
Yeah, it's always seems easier to, because then you can go with exaggerated forms and things like that, but with a human it's like you kind of have to dial it in a little bit, and
You gotta
especially with
get
the
that
face
right
and
mark.
stuff like that. Like faces are always hard, which if I was gonna be working with just the straight clay, I'd almost be tempted to go with some kind of like more abstract, like not put many details in the face on purpose. Okay, we will depart and cut to some time later. Usually it's taken us about 2 weeks. See you then. But first, I need to talk a little bit about my creative process. For some reason, I feel like holding the mic. I don't know why. Hello. Should probably turn the gain down if I'm going to be holding it this close to my face. So my initial thought for this character was Carol from The Walking Dead. Something about thinking older lady in the apocalypse who's skinny but still can be intimidating. Because like that's kind of how I took like dark and brooding. I was thinking a character who appears weak but is surprisingly shrewd, and so then there's a danger in like her prowess, sort of. Plus, I think I just instantly interpreted the white as being white hair. Hopefully that's enough white. I mean, I also added bandages in the end, so hopefully the hair and the bandages will be enough white to constitute that being one of the primary colors used in her color scheme. Because I didn't want to like oversaturate it with white. This is definitely a picture where I was using the criteria that we drew selectively in order to try and highlight it rather than it being up front. There were a lot of things that I had to kind of workshop to see what direction I wanted to go, and then a lot of things that I had to kind of walk the line on.
one of the first questions that I had was, do I cut off an arm or a leg? Originally, I thought maybe I wanted to cut off an arm and then position her so that she's like, she has like a shoulder pauldron covering her stump that she's like using as a shield, sort of. But I just kept feeling that like, that came across a little too strong, maybe. And then when I was experimenting with different silhouettes, something really popped out at me with like the idea of her like leaning on a crutch so that like her shoulder's up and her head is down and she looks a little like predatorial almost. She's still dangerous, but she has just sort of like an exhausted, don't mess with me look. The next thought I had was whether to imagine her as a hero or a villain. Now I know this doesn't really matter, because it's not like I'm gonna have a detailed character or backstory, but I like to have an understanding of the characters, right? I think the first one we did, the robot girl, was the most detailed, because I actually did have kind of a backstory for her and like a basic sort of synopsis of just like, oh, this is what her stories would be about, but I don't know. Like I didn't stop to figure out the details. And then with the lizard sloth, I just knew that he was a mutant lizard that was very down on his luck. For this character, I really started to lean into, I guess it's still similar to the Carol archetype, someone who maybe started out as like a victim early in the apocalypse, but then followed like a revenge, you become what you hate type story where she went from victimized to more of a tyrant herself. While I was doing the basic sketches and trying to figure out the wardrobe, I kept having trouble imagining her as old. The like drawing her posturing and stuff like that, I just kept thinking like middle-aged at the most. And I did fix that in the end, because really a lot of that comes down to like the details of the white hair and the wrinkles and stuff like that makes her look old. But in the preliminary visualization, I thought maybe giving her a dress would make her look older, like if she's from sort of an older time period. But the problem is that kind of came across a little too retro futuristic, like steampunk or something like that. I don't want her to be steampunk. I also didn't want her to be rich/regal, because that's its own category as opposed to dark and brooding. And I thought giving her a dress might make her seem too like fancy, and rather than like a survivor. I almost forgot the hat at one point, because I was really trying to think like, how do I make that fit? Do I give her like a wide-brimmed hat that would cast a shadow on her face? Eventually I decided to go smaller, and I thought maybe I could give her like a hat with a veil. But then, when I was thinking of trying to make her like a darker character with the veil specifically, I kept thinking of Harley Quinn's design in the Arkham City DLC when she's mourning. And then I realized, no, I have to dial it back a little bit, because that would seem too creepy. It's not creepy, it's dark and brooding. So as for like specific kind of inspirations for her character, again, this doesn't necessarily shine through in the picture itself. It's just I was trying to keep in mind what type of character I wanted. What I ended up arriving at was a combination of Lena Headey's character from Dread and the mourning mother from Jaws, which I think is about as unsettling of a combination as I possibly could have come up with. Also, a couple of comments. Early in the process, I was looking at pictures of Furiosa to try and brainstorm ideas. That was more when I thought maybe she'd be more of a heroic figure. But I still kept that with the name, that I kind of took Ma, Carol, and Furiosa and combined it into McRosa, or more specifically Madame McRosa, because I thought that sounded more noteworthy, stately, like she's a leader. You know, I don't know. That's where my gut led me. At one point I was gonna throw Mrs. Let's see, what is her name? The mom from Jaws is Mrs. Kintner. So at one point I was trying to combine all of those and call her like, what was it? McRosner. But I felt like that was too complicated. Also, when I was figuring out the wardrobe, I used Hero Forge. I think I actually used that with Laser Folly as well, but I wasn't able to visualize as much of my ideas because it's not that various of a program. It does help with the wardrobe a little bit, though. Enough that I was worried that I was cheating at one point, but then I decided, no, it's not. It's not cheating, it's just extra visualization. As for the actual drawing of the picture, I started out with a basic sketch because I wanted to be able to do it as much of my own work as possible. When doing rough sketches and conceptualizing stuff like that. I still prefer drawing on physical paper, but I wanted to try and do it all from scratch on clip paint. But my first silhouette didn't really work. It wasn't awful. Like, in the end, I compared the two and it wasn't terrible, but like there just kept being little things. Like, I kept having to readjust her legs and her head, and in the end I realized that like the shoulder with the crutches, like I really wanted it to seem like she was leaning up, but that kept coming across like way too exaggerated, and it almost looked like part of her body was like sticking out too far. So then I ended up using the 3D modeling tool that is on Clip Studio Paint to figure out the pose, and I also found the settings where you can adjust the model to make it skinnier or make the proportions more exaggerated. So I did dial it in and do my own adjusting and stuff like that. It's not like I just based it entirely off of the default model. I sketched the outline, filled in the colors, and then kind of went back around as I was drawing, and I kept thickening the outline. And like at one point I wanted to try and go for almost a comic book style. I need to learn how to simplify things a little bit. That didn't exactly work out. Like, I still used my own style, and it doesn't really look like a comic book, but I still learned things from that art, I think. Like, I'm coming into a better understanding of how art works. At one point I decided I was gonna do more of like a legit background rather than just a blank like character background, and I mostly did that to try and have a better grounding for the lighting. So what I was imagining is that like she's standing in like the bottom of a silo of some sort and like kind of blocking your escape, so that there's like a softer light coming from the top with some deep shadows around her, and then there's a doorway behind her that's like giving her a backlight, which is why then I also, in the end, I went over and gave her a white outline to help her pop out from the background. And then I also blurred the background almost into non-existence. I put a lot of work into the background. I knew I was gonna blur it, so it's not like I made it uber detailed. But at one point I didn't have it that blurred, and I was like, oh, but I want to show off my work a little bit, but also with the background, it doesn't really matter. So then I decided to blur it, because the character is supposed to be the main focal point, you know? Oh yeah, and one of the details I did was I put it into Photoshop, and on Photoshop there's like these lighting effects that you can do. It's a little funky, like I put it on both her and the background, but the one with her, like I ended up just layering it on top of the regular picture and then like dropping the opacity to like, I forget if it was 20% or even lower, just something like that, so that you can kind of see the lighting effect, but it's not obvious, because it does the lighting effect by putting this kind of wrinkled texture on things. And so in some areas, like I thought with the clothing that kind of worked, but then it looked a little too unnatural, like she had like this stony texture covering her. But for the concrete walls of the background, that was actually good, because then it gave it kind of this stony cracked texture with light shining on one side. But again, I blurred that, so you can't really see it, but I'll probably try to show it to you in the editing.
And we're back. And I forgot to take into consideration the continuity of this video when I cut my hair short.
Blink, blink,
But
blink.
too late now. My eyes!
All right, all right.
I need my crown. Oh, wait, here.
Cover it up! Cover it up!
I need something. There.
Do you feel better about yourself?
Oh.
I feel distinguished.
Distinguished.
You look like an angry medieval librarian.
I'm okay with that. Well, do we have any preamble thoughts?
I made a thing.
How you made a thing?
Did
Yeah.
you make a thing?
I drew a thing.
Well,
Yeah.
that semi-constitutes making.
Mhm. There are some constraints involved when you're playing around with different different mediums. I don't know exactly how things would have gone, but I feel like there were certain decisions that I made knowing that I was drawing something that I maybe wouldn't have made with 3 dimensions. So it's interesting. Yeah.
And there were decisions I wished I could have made if I were drawing it. So this was a challenge, but a fun experiment. I think I learned some things.
Yeah.
I hopefully can follow in your crafting footsteps. I hope
Learn from me, Sonny.
I hope I made you proud, Papa.
We'll have to see about that, son. Anyway, without further ado.
Okay, we reveal it both at the same time. Or...
That's what we did last time, I think. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, now do we trade them off? I guess this is really good. That's really good. I feel like I just need to study this for a little bit. Did you have any inspiration for the coloring?
The coloring?
Yeah, because I was wondering if you copied the shading style off of something, because I wasn't sure if it was just reminding me of something else.
Not explicitly. Like, I can talk about some of my inspirations. Like, basically what she's supposed to be is Carol from Walking Dead meets Mama from Dread.
Okay.
Yeah, like, I took sort of like the baggy tank top look. So yeah, I wasn't specifically like copying anything, but just kind of taking inspiration from like the types of wardrobes that they would have.
I really like the posing. That's what helps bring it all together. And you may not believe it, but when I was initially beginning the planning process, I wanted to draw inspiration from Carol from The Walking Dead. But then I realized I wouldn't be able to craft like a face or likeness that realistic into a figure.
But I do kind of like the face.
Yeah. When constructing the face, I decided just to start and see what happens without a clear end goal, and I was satisfied enough by the end. So when we picked out the apocalyptic genre, everyone goes immediately towards modern apocalyptic. I wanted to spice it up a little bit. I wanted to go, what if you started in a more ancient times and then a semi... Don't pull my sword. I don't pull the sword.
I wasn't expecting... I was just like, oh, does the sword come... It does.
It does.
So that's ingenuity there.
Yeah, got full sword action. While I was getting into the finishing touches, I was afraid I was leaning too far in the fantasy, since that's a separate thing. So then I tried to go as hard as I could in the beaten and weathered.
It definitely looks...
They are surviving through something which is more pertained to apocalypse.
Yeah, like it makes me think of design. Like, I don't know what specific era it was, like 80s or whatever, but like makes me think of like the way like older apocalyptic stuff would be drawn, like I guess the original Mad Max, or like something like the head wrapping makes me think of like Lawrence of Arabia or something like something like that. So
yeah,
I can see that.
They are in the desert apocalypse, where yours is definitely like more in the modern Walking Dead, just trying to survive, and this is like complete nuclear holocaust annihilation, but more fantastical maybe.
Was that like a...
That was I think it was a handle off something.
A handle.
The base looked like a handle.
That makes sense.
It looked like it would screw onto something. And then constructing the hand apparatus, I knew I wanted a hand apparatus, but I didn't know what it would become until I just added to it. It has several different modes of swivelability. And if I wanted...
got that.
What's that?
Oh, just trying to... What was it, like, snapped onto? Was it just pressure fitted in there? Or?
Let's see, it is snapped onto these pieces of a giant spring that I
Right.
borrowed from you. It's in the box if you...
Oh,
The big, long spring.
that was
did it
wear
come
liner
from?
from a welder, I think.
Ooh, okay. That came in handy because then whatever this springy joint thing was, like it snaps perfectly
see that.
onto that. So
It's
if
convenient.
I don't want to test it too much in case it ends up breaking, but if I really wanted to, I could snap it off this part here and put it on here, so it would be a different joint and move a little differently, but I stuck it here so it had kind of a stopping point so it wouldn't be completely hanging out there in the middle of nowhere.
But yeah, and I'd be interested, like I'll be holding on to it so I can take pictures of it and stuff like that. But no, I'd be interested to take a good picture of it and then posterize it with the settings to see, because like something about like I'm looking at it, I'm like, I think that this does look like concept art somehow, like
sweet.
the scrappiness of it, I guess.
Okay, so I've got a question for you. Out of all of our qualifications here, which do you think your piece best represents? And is there any specific one thing that you felt like you couldn't quite hit as hard as you might have wanted? For me, I really just didn't care about the hat aspect. I decided to immediately, like right away, interpret hat as head covering. I understand a hood is not a hat.
And because a lot of the human accessories, like I'm still workshopping that, I don't know exactly how those should be classified, so that's all right.
I figured since it's very limited, like there's only like 3 options, then that's to then be more open to your interpretation.
Just to kind of nudge you in the direction of doing something a little different.
Yeah.
I know, like, one thing that was more of a last minute was that, like, at first, I had it pretty much, like done, and then I decided, sometimes, like, you know, when you show other people, then that suddenly makes you more aware of if there's anything that needs to be tweaked. So I showed it to Katie and gave her the paper, and then as I was looking at it and as she was reading it, she got to the beaten and old part, and I'm like, that armor looks new. Like, I had made it, like, shiny armor. So just in, like, the last...
Oh, okay.
I just took an extra, like, 40 minutes to try and add the dents and the rust and stuff like that. And that was the day I was gonna go print it off. So that was the last minute thing.
Yeah, that was the same with me. I had done some painting, like, on the clothing to smudge it up and make sure it was dirty and worn. And then I'm like, okay, that's probably good enough. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't even touch the armor. So then I go back and try to buff up the armor, and probably did like 3 or 4 passes of that, and then glued sand.
I think maybe as far as the one that I was exemplifying the most, like I was really trying to dial in like the dark and brooding kind of with
And you nailed
the
it,
facial
too.
expression too.
And like just subtle things help with that, like the shadow around the eyes. Which ironically, I had called it done last night, and then I was like, wait a minute. The area around her eyes and her face was just plain white. And so I was like, I want that to look more dark and brooding. So I smudged it up a bit. Like that, in both cases, like that really helps. Like, okay, now it does look more dark and brooding.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking at our list. I really want to say we both nailed it when it comes to basically every qualification. You know, they appear fairly human. They have their head coverings, as we've established. Very noticeably only have 3 limbs. Very apocalyptic. Female and old. Skinny and weak. Dark and brooding. Half armor. See, when I was adding the armor, part of me wants to, you know, put on armor. I'm like, no. When I'm planning this, I need to limit the armor. So as I'm putting it together, make sure it's just some armor and then figure out how to cover up the rest of it in something that wouldn't look like an armor covering. And the same here. She has some armor, but it's not like completely armored, beaten old. You've got a big knife.
Yeah, kind of like a machete. That was the shape I was going for.
And I had gone with the sword half of sword and knife. And my original plan was to have a knife attachment on the arm, but then I gave that up. And then a couple days ago, when I rated you for parts again, then I saw these. What do you call
brads?
Those? Brads. Yeah, I saw the brads, and I'm like, maybe these will come in handy. And as I was trying to plan out the arm,
And when you grab those, I'm like, those would make good little knives.
yeah, there you go. My thoughts exactly. And then the final color scheme. That was another thing. I was like, I wanted to keep some dark colors in there to help out with the dark and brooding aspect. But then if the main scheme is yellow and white, you gotta make sure that's the main thing that pops. And yeah, I look at that and I'm like, there's the yellow, there's the white, like bing, bang, boom. And yeah, I feel like I was very satisfied with that. Like you got your white on your top, on your bottom, kind of
The way the cape is draped over.
yeah, and especially when you turn around, like it's all white, and then just little bits of gold sticking out there. And I lean more into the gold. It's still in the yellow spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's what I had decided to go more the ancient, more historical route or time period.
I remember when I was young and first kind of noticing post-apocalyptic, like I think we were at a hotel room or something, and one of the Mad Max movies were playing. The first thing that jumped out at me was like, hey, it's like the future, but the past.
Whoa.
Like, things have regressed. Isn't that interesting?
The apocalypse is fun.
Or then it also kind of makes me think of the Reign of Fire concept of like literally kind of going back to Middle Ages with dragons and such.
It's a good concept.
Alrighty then. Well, that about wraps up round, I don't know whether to call it round 2 or 3. I mean, it's round 3, but we've only recorded 2. So
round 3, episode 2.
yeah. Of our random character creation challenge. This was fun. I liked it. I hope you liked it.
I hope you liked it.
He needs a little enjoyment in his life.
He's my
down
little
on
buddy.
his luck. I was looking at him just while I was setting everything up again and remembering like how I shaped the head and stuff. I'm like, why is it that when I'm holding this guy, like I just want to rub his little head
You have to rub his little head.
and scratch under his little chin.
Baby Yoda don't got nothing on this guy. But after I say that, like he gives me more of frickin' Babu Frick vibes. Babu Frick ain't got nothing on this guy.
No, because if this guy had a voice, he wouldn't just. I'm like, he'd actually have like a proper vocal performance.
Would he be civilized?
I mean, you take a look at this fellow here.
Or I remember, we must have been fresh off the first season of Mando last time, because I know we were comparing him to Queel and like imagining him having more of that type of voice.
But we're not living in a post-season 1 Mando world anymore. We're living in a post-season Mando 3. On a scale of 1 to 10, how does that make you feel?
Well, how do I feel just living in this world? I mean, it's
It's lacking?
it's lacking, yeah, because like the season itself, it's like,
Impromptu last-minute review.
And because
season
I may or may not. Part of me still wants to do a fixing season 3 video. Do it.
No.
But we'll see because I have.
No,
I have,
seriously.
Yeah. Well,
Tell him to do it. Tell him to do it. If you care.
I'll try to make time. Because I'm still so confused because the spectacle, if you just take individual fight scenes, it's like there's some really cool stuff here.
Really cool clips to watch on YouTube.
And then there's Lizzo.
It's time to mourn Star Wars.
Is Mandalorian Season 3 the closest we've gotten to the holiday special? Cheesy celebrity cameos?
It's a very excellent question. These are the questions that everyone over at Lucasfilm needs to ask. Should
Yeah.
we keep doing this? Should we keep inching ever closer to the Star Wars Holiday Special? You'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
It ain't too late to back out now. There's better roads. Better roads to take.
Boop.
You got boop him too.
But yeah. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day. Goodbye.
No!
Don't jump.